I want to keep this conversation going. We're going to move it around a little bit because it's going to talk about micro-credentials. We're moving topics to micro-credentials. I finished a great book called Range by David Epstein. Anyone read this one? Anyone heard of it? It's a New York Times bestseller, Range. It all is about how generalists triumph in a specialized world. But it actually counteracts that argument and says if you have more range, you're going to be more successful. That's not what we learn. That's not how we educate. It's all about specialize, drive, and succeed. So this counters that conversation. And even further to that conversation is all about the micro-credentials where you can actually get education for a micro amount of information. So let's talk about this. Let's bring the conversation forward. I want to invite the experts in the room to the stage. Let's welcome the moderator who will keep the discussion intact and interactive, Dr. Karina R. Jensen, founder and executive director of Global Mind Network. Come on up to the stage. The stage is yours. I'm going to invite you up to invite your panelists, okay, and I'll be back. You're welcome.
To future of work is here. How are we going to succeed and learn through micro-credentials? And my focus is more around global innovation. So I'm founder and executive director of Global Minds Network and professor of practice in global innovation and leadership. And so my context, or all of my research and training and consulting, is really focused on how to facilitate global innovation through multicultural collaboration. And that is important because we're speaking a lot about collaboration, but we're not speaking about the context. How do we create learning journeys that have multicultural and digitally connected contexts and environments? That's today's environment. Very important to optimize that learning from culturally diverse perspectives because we have grand challenges to solve in this world, and we really need to harness talent and local talent. And so one aspect of that, and very important, is micro-credentials. And how can we use that to innovate and quickly learn and create more powerful outcomes? So I would like to invite my panel members, April R. Anderson, who is a director of surgical technology at Camden County College. April is holding several board positions and leadership roles. And Kaushik Chatterjee, who is the founder and director of Xform Learning, who has created great influence through executive coaching as well as for youth empowerment. And Sawan Kapoor, who we could say is the director of Dire to Hire Solutions, but is also known as India's leading career coach. So welcome, Kapoor. And finally, Reverend Dr. Yvonne Wilson Barnes, who is the owner and founder of Regal Consulting, Regal Leadership Consulting, and she holds several impressive positions and a former dean as well. So we're going to I have a very impressive panel, as you see, and what I'm going to do now is to invite them to tell their story and share their insights.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Good morning, I'm April Anderson. I am a certified surgical technologist. I'm also a certified surgical first assistant. And I'm the owner of A.R. Anderson Surgical Consulting, where we build surgical technology programs for colleges and universities and healthcare systems. There is a great need for surgical technologists, and I thought this panel discussion would be appropriate to highlight this micro-credential.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Kaushik Chatterjee, and I'm a certified ICF coach, so work on the executive side. I am also a certified sales facilitator, so I can work with complex B2B sales and business side, and there's a practice on the career guidance for children. So I've been able to see learning from different aspects, right from students to mid and senior professionals, and have the privilege of putting some a little more than 1,000 hours across all of these segments.
Hi, my name is Sawan Kapoor, and it's wonderful to be here with so many educators. I'm a career coach. I had an accelerated career journey myself. Within 8 years of starting my career, I was running America's largest privately held wine and spirits business. And after that stint there, I went back home to my motherland, India. There was a need for career coaching, something that the formal system of education was not addressing. And we started in an online format. We've been able to scale, so my forecast of the need was right. We're currently at about 300,000 students, and our goal is to reach 1 million people. The job search and application process is something that has been designed by companies and for companies. So candidates compete and the companies win, so this is to give the power back to the job seeker, the career aspirant, and it's been a fun journey. It's lovely to be here.
It's really wonderful to be here amongst an incredible panel of experts in the industry. My name is Reverend Dr. Yvette Wilson Barnes. I am formerly the Associate Dean for Student Affairs at the City University of New York School of Law, which is my alma mater. I was there for 4 years, and prior to that, for 9 years, was the Associate Dean for Student Affairs at Union Theological Seminary. So I have recently relocated from New York City to the state of Virginia, and really look forward to this discussion about micro-credentialing, and it's about innovation. It's exactly what we've been talking about since the start of this conference, that we have to think of new ways to assess knowledge and skill. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to address to our panels, now that you know a little more about their impressive backgrounds, what is micro-credentials? Because some of you may not have the experience or exposure to micro-credentials, so I'd like to ask the panel maybe to tell us in your own words, how would you define micro-credentials? How have you used it? Yeah?
Okay. Everybody keeps looking at me. Okay, so I'll start. I guess I should have sat in a different seat. So for me, micro-credentials, it stands for you don't have to spend a lot of time in school, in college or university in order to get a degree or a trade for something that you could be successful in. And I have that experience because as a certified surgical technologist, my program is only 1 year. And so students who come into the program spend a year with me. I teach them how to work in surgery. So I'm sure, I don't know if anyone has ever heard of a certified surgical technologist and know what that is. No? Okay. All right. So let me just back up a little bit. So we prepare sterile instruments and supplies for surgery. So a surgeon, let's just say someone comes in and they have a procedure that they're getting ready to have done. The surgeon has a preference card where they have a list of everything that they want for that procedure, from instrumentation to sutures and other supplies. And what we do is we prepare that sterilely for the surgeon, and we're there the entire time for the procedure, passing those necessary items to them. And so we're there from beginning to end, from open to closure, and then we move on to the next case after that patient is done. So what I do is I teach people who are interested in this field. It takes 1 to 2 years for them to go through the program. They come out and they can immediately start working. So that's what it is for me. I have a lot of students across the United States that I have, well, the graduates now that I have taught, who have been very successful and still are in the field. Now, on the flip side of that, to go a little bit further, there's an extra piece to that. You go to training another year, and then you become a certified surgical first assistant, which that's what I'm also. I went and got the extra training where I stand across from the surgeon. So a lot of what they do, I can do. So there's some extra pieces to it. So it's still another year after you've been a surgical tech for at least 3 years, then you can go on to become a first assistant. Still a short amount of time, and you can still work at the same time.
Thank you. So to me, micro-credential is I mean to understand micro-learning, because once I learn, then only I deserve the credential. So it's short, sweet, crisp in the sense, we are grappling with a generation, about 50% of it are the millennials and the Gen X. And of course, Alpha is like breathing down the back. There is a huge attention, deficiency syndrome. We all know. Somebody quoted 8 seconds is the attention span. And I did a bit of research, and it's like a 2015 data. And back in 2000, I think it was 12 seconds. So with this rate of erosion of attention, you may have to pay somebody to be attentive. And there's a huge amount of distraction that's happening. So every time we wanted to learn, currently I think all of us look at our cell phones 100 times a day. And so we are sort of enslaved by the shackles of notifications and alerts out there. So in this environment, learning that is bite-sized, easy to choose and internalize and apply, and possibly then get credentialed through a process, to me is a micro-learning. Now, it can be a 10 minutes learning. It can also be a 2 hours learning. It can be an online learning. It can also be an aided learning. But it is break it into chunks that are easy to digest, internalize, build that muscle, go back and celebrate the success.
My response would be not very different from what my esteemed colleagues have said here. Ours, for example, is a program that's a 2-day program. And that's where people get the knowledge. But knowledge is not equal to application. And therefore, if they want to continue their journey, then there is a more extensive engagement. So the definition would be very close to what Yvette said and what Kaushik have mentioned.
So no micro-credential is equal. No micro-credential is equal, right? They all are different within different organizations, within different institutions. What's so powerful about micro-credentialing is it allows, and I'm going to talk about it from an employability perspective and from other perspectives as well, but that you will have, there are students who might not be sure what they want to pursue their degree in, but they now have the opportunity to take these bite-sized courses to determine what's of interest to them. And maybe after taking some of these micro-credential courses in a particular subject area, they find that there is something that strikes a chord within them that maybe now they want to pursue the degree, maybe, or they want to stack these micro-credentials, which they can get credit for, that might go to, let's say, an interdisciplinary focus. Maybe that's something that you pursue, but it gives you that kind of flexibility. The other thing that is so great about micro-credentialing, right? It's portable, right? It's able to move with you wherever you go. There's metadata, right? There's this information, right, that is built into the verifiability, right, of that credential, so that an employer or anyone who is looking to verify that you have this information and you have this knowledge can see what you've learned. Maybe there were quizzes that were a part of that micro-credential. Some micro-credentials don't have that. Some do. That's why I say that no micro-credential is equal. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that it has this sociability, right, that's attached to it, in that you can put it on your social media, you can share it with your network, you can showcase your knowledge and your expertise. So micro-credentialing, has these, it has a lot of tentacles. that allows you to go in different directions, that allows an employer even to see that, you know, you have this knowledge that you have gained that now can lead you to another opportunity, maybe in your place of employment, or an opportunity that you are pursuing with another organization or company or institution.
That's great. And that leads us more to the impact or the learning outcome, because what I'm seeing with clients is this excitement of, wow, I can accelerate my competencies and I can get a certificate in 2 weeks, or rather than maybe spend a year or two to earn a diploma. So there's sense of, because knowledge is changing so quickly, I can specialize and get my certificate in weeks and not months or years. And not only for leaders or managers, but also I've seen that in some of the youth programs too, where you can go in and extracurricular or for summer, intensive summer camps, where they can earn their certificates in these type of micro-credential type learning. So I would like to know from you, maybe we could start with Sawan, what you feel is truly, you know, how can we create more impact and really accelerate learning, and especially on competencies and capabilities?
Well, I think, you know, we see this a lot where the formal system of education has done an excellent job of providing hard skill knowledge, subject matter expertise. It's provided that domain knowledge that is very important because it opens the door to that field or that function. It allows you to participate meaningfully in that area, whether you may be a professional in supply chain or marketing or finance or an engineer. So the formal system of education has done a brilliant job of that. But how do you monetize that skill? Because that skill is going to come to life and get monetized through human interaction. And that's where, I think there's a little bit of a gap. And I think the formal system of education, the educators here in this room, they already recognize that. So, knowing it is the easy part, but saying it out loud is the hard part. And that's where, I applaud everybody here who's here at this conference, because they are recognizing that, there is that gap. And all of you are here to do something about it. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And the comments that the gentleman in the kimono was making earlier, I think the world is, got itself in a real hurry, and it's moving at an unprecedented pace and scale. I recently had the opportunity to look at this documentary called Year Million. And it was a very interesting documentary by National Geographic, where they were talking about the full potential of AI. It may be a little while away, but there's a lot of concerns in how this is going to come to life, because what's happening is the scale and pace at which the world is changing today, the goalpost is moving. So as educators, you have your work cut out for you, because you're trying to prepare somebody for a system that we are still grappling with understanding what that system is going to be, what that world is going to look like. So it's a dynamic process, but I think those are the things that we need to address and stay on the cutting edge with, so that we can continue to adapt and be flexible. I think it's not going to be survival of the fittest. I think it's going to be the survival of the quickest.
And Kaushik, what are your perspectives there on the learning impact in terms of your experience?
Yeah, it's humongous, and I think I'll borrow what he said. So, if we can break it down into competences, and I think there was a discussion around that. Those 56 competences, the delta thing that, he was telling. Now, today, let's say asking questions, listening deeply, or storytelling. Now, these are pretty common skills required for virtually any of the functions in an enterprise. But these are not taught in the B schools, forget about in the elementary schools. However, there are zillions of courses available on the micro-learning sites on each of this. Now, if I'm a learning and development professional, an educator within the enterprise, I'm still traditional in drawing up a training calendar and saying, first quarter we will do this, a 2-day workshop, and then we will have a 2-day workshop in quarter 3, because I'm checklisting that each of my employee should get maybe 6 hours of classroom workshop less training. Now that mindset has to change and possibly give an empowerment. It's like you can empanel some of the courses as part of your learning journey, get into the understanding that, okay, somebody, if Kaushik is working, he can do a deep listening course in quarter 1. I give him 5 credits, and the course is sort of approved in essence. Maybe at his own pace and time, he can do the deep listening, maybe the storytelling course, and I also give him 5 credits. And so, I think there is this system of whatever the micro-innovation that he was talking of has to even change. Because when learning is mapped to our competencies, the ROI is answerable. There is reflective change in the behavior. I come from a sales background, and if I do a storytelling microsite, it's very easy for me to demonstrate during a sales conversation of telling stories of what customers went through and what did I do to make this change. It's very demonstrable and evidence-based. And so, one can then say that, yes, this has worked. So this whole grappling of what is the ROI of a learning, and at least I can talk about India, the enterprises have enough challenge to even release their employees for a training workshop. The managers will hold them back and say, let's do it next time. This is month end and we should not be this disturbing. Now with this little bit of a self-paced and psychologically safe piece, it can actually fall in place when, as an employee, I can possibly have to accumulate 100 learning credit points. Now to top it up, if I get a coach, or if it is in line with my individual development plan, then there's a lot of sense in this process. A coach can do a periodic intervention to say, hey, questioning, great. Did this reflect in some of your sales pipeline? Wonderful, this is working. Or you pivot and possibly do maybe something on how you can use business analysis, crunching the sales numbers, and giving a more meaningful outcome to your customers.
And you have the question of how accepted is it? So great to get the certification, but is it really that accepted by future employers? And what kind of governance? Because anybody could say, well, I got certified, I have all these certificates. So there's a question of governance and credibility, and what do you have to say about that, Reverend Dr. Yvette?
Yeah, I talk about, when I was at CUNY School of Law, during the pandemic, professional development couldn't occur the way that it did prior to, right? We couldn't travel. So one of the things that CUNY School of Law was able to do was they purchased the LinkedIn Learning for us as employers, so that we could take a number of different courses whenever we needed to, right? And you get the credential in, because, if you have, let's say you're not getting it through your employer, and you have, a subscription with LinkedIn, you can access the LinkedIn Learning, and you can get the credentials. You can take a class in DEI. You can take a course in strategic planning. You can take a variety of different courses on, how to communicate more effectively. All the soft skills courses that we were just talking about. So that's really beneficial for someone who is a supervisor and someone who is assessing their team or their staff to support their professional development. It's very beneficial. I am a HBCU Community Fellow. That's the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Fellow, which is part of Clark Atlanta University in Georgia. And I just completed a micro-credential on navigating board governance. And this particular fellowship that I'm in, right, is preparing, all of us who are in higher ed to be executive leaders within HBCU institutions. And it's powerful to have that kind of credential that shows if we become a president of an HBCU or we're in some high-level executive leadership position, that we understand how boards work, that we understand governance, and to be able to have someone look, again, like I said, through the metadata to see actually what I learned when they access that, that credential, really is not only beneficial to them to say, okay, you know, Dr. Wilson, she really understands how this works, but it also is beneficial to me.
I think governance is going to play a very big role. And I think, Dr. Wilson, you were referring to this earlier, how micro-credentialing allows you to test drive a potential career. So a quick show of hands, how many people here have at some point in their life doubted what they do? Is it their real true calling?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a fair bit of us. So this is something that needs to be regulated. And you see this on the internet because you see all of the people trolling. Just because you have something to say doesn't mean you're really saying something of substance. And I think there are courses, and then there are courses that are well branded, and regulation needs to bridge that gap to make sure that the courses that are gaining traction or getting out there are ones that lead to meaningful outcomes. So I think there's going to be regulation that needs to be devised at the national level for countries and possibly even at the international level beyond. And then there has to be a regulatory framework that should be addressed by industry bodies. And when these two segments come together, that I think will better align courses to be able to actually get to the outcomes. Because today, you look at on social media platforms, everybody can flash their certificate, right? This is what I did, this is what I did, and you can stack them and that starts to add to your resume. But when you hire somebody like that, you may get disappointed that they have all of that stack, but the outcomes that they were hired to produce are not nearly anywhere close to what their resume was representing. So I think regulation needs to walk in. This is a fast emerging area, and I think it's the need of the hour. So academicians need to partner with government, need to partner with regulatory bodies, need to define the standards for the new world.
I wanted to just add something because SUNY, the State University of New York, they are trying to do that. They actually have a task force, and they're working also very closely with faculty, right, to help to come up with the standards of excellence and standards that can be followed for this micro-credentialing. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the accreditors, how they help to also standardize it. And I have not seen enough information that explains what that is going to look like.
Well, it's very interesting to hear that SUNY, that's the State University of New York.
Yes, that's the State University of New York.
Correct. So I'll give you a little more of a macro example here. If you look at my country, if you look at India in the last 8 years, you will see that there's almost $1 trillion worth of foreign direct investment that has flowed into India. And 60% of that number has happened in the last 8 years. And that investment has come into 61 different industries across 31 states. This is really happening at the grassroots level. And the beauty of this story is not that entrepreneurship is winning. The beauty of this story is what the gentleman, the keynote speaker earlier was referring to. It's accessibility. So today, people in tier 1, 2, and 3 cities have that same level of accessibility. So this is something I think that India has done really well, and it's got it right. And I think that's something that can be studied and can be learned from in how to create an effective policy framework that allows that kind of access to come to life.
I'd like to hear from April, especially in the medical profession. Governments must be very important for micro-credentials, so I'd like to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so with my field, the government really is very active with what we do They govern quite a bit, some to a fault, depending on the state. They put limitations and not recognize the needs. So I was listening to Dr. Yvette talking about the employers recognizing the need for professional development or the changes. So with surgical technology, there's a great need. Just like there's a shortage of nurses, there's a shortage of surgical technologists. And these healthcare systems are recognizing that they need that. And there are avenues that they can take and get the assistance of the government to set up programs where they can do that. But what I found is a particular healthcare system in New Jersey that I work with, they were wanting to start a program where I told them they could hire directly out of their own, and that way they would have the employees with the credentialing and with the expertise that they needed to fill those open slots. So working together, just strictly for healthcare, working together with the government to say, hey, we need more of these programs, we need to get them approved, and then to working with the accreditors, because you have to have the accreditation that puts that stamp of approval on the program saying they provide the education needed for those that are coming through the program. So when we send them out into the operating room to work, they have the skills necessary. So there's no one or two people, it's a group, different groups that need to work together to make that possible.
Great.
Can I just add one
Yes.
thing? Yeah, so I think, there will be unusual partnerships in even regulation also. Like, government, wherever in the countries where primary, the education at the baseline is the focus, I don't think they're going to get into this as a priority now. However, social media is also, as you said, is a placeholder. Yesterday there was this conversation of ChatGPT and trusted ChatGPT. There is something, a verifier that's going to sit on the AI stack to say, if I say I have got an executive presence course from Stanford University, one is I need to have a Credly badge, that is one, but maybe platforms like LinkedIn will regulate and do a trust verification without me adding to buy that Credly, which is costly now, and do this little piece and say, Kaushik, this is not an impanel course by us. So you'll find unusual regulators maybe, fostering in this ecosystem.
Excellent. So I think we've covered many questions, and I know we need to wrap up because we want to take a few questions from the audience. So just kind of a final wrap-up question, and if you look ahead into the future, what do you see for micro-credentials? Any last thoughts? What do you think we'll be seeing or enjoying?
I think there will be an increase. From what I've seen, many people are changing careers and they are trying to find something different. And then they don't want to spend a lot of time in school going through 4 years, 5 years of training. They need something quick. For my students that I've had come through, a lot of them are non-traditional students. So they have families, they have husbands, wives, and they need to work to take care of their families. So they are more committed, they're more dedicated, they come in ready to learn, and in a year, 2 years' time, they're done and they're moving on. So I think with the need and what we have going on, they're gonna rise up a lot more. And we need to have the programs in place to send them through, get the training, so they will be ready for it.
Yeah, it's going to definitely grow and grow exponentially. And I think it's going to touch the DEI charter. Microlearning is accessible to everybody. It includes everybody. I can also do an executive presence course even when I'm 70 years young. And so those charters will be there, and it's going to save costs for the enterprise. So, that's one of the for business, sort of agenda that is going to say. And as I think Sawan was mentioning, I think this can also give an opportunity to even test the pivoting of the career. Interfunctionally, somebody in sales can move into finance. Possibly there's an interest out there on risk and whatever, the crunching of the numbers part of it. And that, if it is evidenced and demonstrated by the court. So those opportunities are there. Earlier, which was completely a no-no. And we are living anyway a dynamic and volatile world, so things has to change. Yeah.
Well, like it or not, micro courses are here to stay. I think what they've really enabled is that the world today does not have an information problem. The world has an implementation problem. And they make it economical. They allow for these career pivots, and we get a lot of people who, don't resonate with what they're doing any longer. And I think these, you use a multitude of direct and indirect strategies to help somebody move into a career that resonates more deeply with them. Because again, when you are thinking about switching careers, there are different degrees of difficulty. If you're just trying to switch your industry, that's relatively easier because functional knowledge goes across industries. But when you're trying to switch your function, then that requires a more intensive upskilling because, think about somebody who went to college for finance and now wants to get into a career of information technology. The base that you need is a very different base. And then there are people who are trying to switch both. They're trying to switch their industry and their function. Now, those relatively are the most complex of moves. I think microcourses it's a wonderful way to be able to do that for people who are trying to put a saddle on a running horse. Because your life is going on. It's very easy to put a saddle on a horse that is stationary, but that's not what everyday life feels like. You're trying to put the saddle on a horse that's already running, and that's an entirely different skill set. And anything that aids that, because it makes it so practical, I think is very welcome.
I'll just quickly say that, I agree with my colleagues. It's here to stay. One of the things we didn't talk about is the affordability of it, and so it's not going anywhere. And in the United States, the way debt is, student debt, I can tell you that micro-credentialing is the way to go, especially for individuals who cannot afford, the 4-year degrees and beyond.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Give it up for please. All right, wonderful conversation. Thank you. It was very insightful. Please, I invite you to take the end of the stage so we can take a nice group shot for the paparazzi. We're moving along. We're behind schedule, and I want to keep everyone moving along. First half of the second day, I know there's some good conversations that you guys want to ask. We're going to keep it for lunch because they can really engage then. But if you don't mind standing up here, they can